All right, it's your boy DK, and we are back. So, had some technical difficulty to go with the equipment, but you know what? It's good. It's good. So, we had a little hiccup, we had a little blip, but we back in effect in the building. E.I.T.H.R podcast, you can go ahead and follow us on social media at the E.I.T.H.R, E.I.T.H.R. This is a continuation from episode number 93, but we're just calling it episode 94. We're on our way to episode number 100, and if the stripper is listening, get that smile up in your face because this was not intentional. It just happened to be the way it's going to go. So, as we were talking about in the last previous thing, was credible people when it comes to sources of information. It used to be when you got the information, it was accurate, you knew it was solid, it was good. Now the information happens to be information is just first. All because you agree with what I put out first doesn't necessarily mean that's accurate. That's just the first information that was released. As I said in the previous episode, people who agree with me doesn't necessarily mean that we are right. It just means that we agree on the same thing. We believe in the same information, we believe in the same perspective, the same argument. We share the same viewpoint that's being told. Doesn't mean that is accurate. It just makes us say, see, that doesn't mean anything. The problem is because everyone can be first with their take. Folks think that their source is the right source. That's not the case, right? It's not. That's the purpose of my particular podcast. That's the reason for my particular platform is I try to run my podcast the way I run my conversations. Anyone who's ever conversation with me, it's always, okay, let's look at the flip side. Matter of fact, I'm so try to be equal on both sides to make an informed decision on anything that I do. A lot of people tend to say, I don't know what side to stand on. Because I don't just jump one way. I don't just jump the other. I try to gather as much information as I possibly can before I make a decision. Am I always on time with that? No. I'm human. Sometimes the information that has the other side of the argument isn't readily available for me, or it's from a source that hasn't reached me yet. It happens. It does. But that doesn't mean I'm the kind of person that would sit back and say, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for putting me up on game. I was unaware of that. I'm not too big to say I messed up on something. But a lot of people are. So the reason why I'm saying to get a credible source, ladies and gentlemen, is because the truth is somewhere intertwined in between both sides. And I think we all know, because there are a lot of people will sit back and agree that they believe whichever side of the fence they tend to lean on politically. They tend to watch news channels and outlets that veer or gear more towards that political side. And I've had conservative friends, I've had liberal friends who sit back and say, yes, this particular channel that I watch for my news, they do tend to lean this way. They do tend to lean that way. And because of that, I respond with, you know that they're leaning biasly towards this. Why do you take their information and run with it as if it's gospel? If you know that, why not watch it for what it's worth? Discipline yourself to listen to what the other side has to say. And then make a kosher decision once you've heard both sides. Because I think what happens is both sides, they take the truth and they put their spin on it. And the sad part about it is, whether you're liberal, whether you're conservative, whatever outlet you tend to watch, they kind of know exactly when, how, and where to hit you to get you to tune in, to get you to react, to get you to respond, to get you to engage. They understand that. In addition, people have to realize this shit. Yo, the truth, they're never going to give us the whole truth. The late George Carlin has said, if anyone knows the comedian George Carlin, everybody loves George Carlin. The last thing they want is an informed, educated society. They can't control an informed, educated society, which is the reason why they control the news that we get. They don't expect for people to want to be informed collectively, because basically there's too much work, there's too much thinking. So, I said the story before, man. When it comes to politics and shit, I have literally went to my conservative friends and said, tell me your perspective on this. Tell me your viewpoint on this. What is it that I am missing? Because I tend to lean more on the liberal side. So I would go to them. Give me your information to educate me. Share with me. And most of the time, in the beginning, they didn't want to, because they thought it was going to be a verbal fight, because that's typically what it is on social media. But I have to reassure them, like, yo, man, I'm not coming at you sideways with any. I want to know, what is it you see that I'm missing? What is it that you see that I'm missing? What is it that you see that I'm not getting? I'm not accepting. I'm not recognizing. What is it? So they would share with me. And my A1, she was like, her whole life a conservative. I wouldn't say a hardcore conservative, but she was a conservative until maybe 6-7 years ago, where she kind of recognized what I peeped. And so when her and I talk about certain things, we're both like, we can recognize the bullshit. We can recognize it. Because we being that we looked for it from the opposing political side, we took those same things and we applied it to the side that we were for, and put a non-biased hat on and looked at it from clear glasses, not from blue lenses or red lenses, just from. And then we sit back and say, okay, this is what people think this. This is why people think that. This is how they can see this. This is how they, okay, now I understand why people say this. Now the problem with that is not everyone has the same like mind. Not everybody wants to recognize the bullshit from their own political party. And I kind of liken it to teams, to sports, right? If you're a diehard fan of, let's say, Niners or Chargers or Raiders or whatever team, if you're a team, you're never going to say anything negative about your team, but you will say something negative about your rival team or an opposing team. But if you were to look at those same things for your organization that you support, you would see it. Now, you might see more of it, you might see less of it, but you're going to see it. And game could recognize game. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the true definition of the term that they have now weaponized in politics, woke. And I know people hate it. I know people don't like that word. It triggers some people, which is amazing to me. But the phrase has always been used to be informed, to be aware, to consciously recognize any type of injustice, imbalance, or abuse in workplace, social neighborhood, whatever the case might be, inequalities. That's kind of what the term was. So going back to having credible sources, people that you know, when it comes to certain things, these are the people that can also inform you what is true, what is being manipulated, what is a flat out lie. One group of people that amazes me is our elders. Our elders are legitimately, man, they are walking encyclopedias, right? If you want to sit back and understand what life was like, talk to a bunch of people who happen to have, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years on you in life. And I'll break it down for you. They'll tell you in a heartbeat. This is what it was like then. Here's what it's like now. They'll tell you. If you listen to people who grew up in certain neighborhoods and you ask them, what was life like then versus now? And they will simply tell you what the similarities are in today's world compared to what the similarities were in their world. And it's fucking amazing how everything is very much identical. It's just less physical and more digital. And if you pay attention, you'll recognize it. Because we live in a system that is set up a certain way. And in order for that system to function and to survive in a way that it was designed to, it needs for certain parameters to be devices, and it needs for certain things to exist and run. When you talk to people who have seen it from analog to digital, to high def, to 3D, to virtual, soon to artificial, there are certain levels of similarity in that. The matrix is coded. And so when you talk to people who know how to decipher the code, it's easy for you to sit back and see the similarities and what is what and what's not. But a lot of people think, and I remember myself, man, when I was a teenager, man, I remember my mom would sit back and tell me things about what was like, you know, back in the 60s and 70s. And I remember telling my mom, it's not like that, you know, it's not like that anymore. It's not like what it was when you were growing up. And as I got older, I realized, yes, it is. Ain't nothing new under the sun, bro. Ain't nothing new under the sun. It's just shaped differently. It's a different color. It's a different texture. These dance moves, these slogans, these everything is recycled and reused and just repackaged. That's about it. So find yourself someone who's credible. He, she, they'll break it down for you. And if you kind of speak the language of, okay, what is it today? Okay, back then it was this. You learn the history of what it was, right? You learn the history of what it once was before you, so that way you'll see the pattern repeat itself. When it comes to fashion, they say history repeats itself every 20, 30 years. So you're going to start seeing trends from 20, 30 years ago start to become popular in today's world. You didn't reinvent nothing, bro. You just brought it back. There's a video I saw online of this poor girl describing a house phone. And she's talking about maybe just one phone you leave in the house and it's connected to a cord. And it's a phone that everyone can use. It'll be a cool idea to kind of keep people from using cell phones. And it was like, you're describing a landline, sweetie. You described a landline. That's all you did. You described a landline. But they swore up and down. It was like the greatest thing ever. Right? Certain phrases were used before you were even an idea. Right? Like your parents were teenagers using this word. And you think you came up with it because I know things evolve and things change. But again, it's one of those things where if you have a credible source, they can show you where the history of this is. When it comes to politics, we have made changes. We have made progress. But in order for the system to stay the way it has always been, there are major components that will never ever give up their power with ease. They can't. Because the system was meant for those people who are in charge to stay in charge. Listen, when it comes to politics and society and economy, again, this is my opinion. All we are children to them. We can't function, we can't live without them giving us the need and guidance and direction. Right? In the movie Training Day, to protect the sheep, you have to catch a wolf. And it takes a wolf to catch a wolf. So put yourself in a wolf situation to think like a wolf. You'll understand how a wolf moves, or have a better understanding of how wolves move. They look at us and they see us as irresponsible, godless, heathen children. Then we break it down to race, culture, colors, and to categorize. Understand something, our government, in my opinion, breaks things down so they can easily identify with what is what. They know how to manage, they know how to discipline, they know how what reacts, who does what. Excuse me. It's easy for them to do that by compartmentalizing everything. You know how to handle it accordingly. That's why you have red lines. Yes, red line was something from the 60s and it exists today. You have less people enforcing red lines because they don't believe in the same, but there are still people who do enforce red lines. They know red lines exist. Going off the rails with that conversation about having a valid, credible source of where to get things from, it connects with this, y'all. The situation that happened in Tennessee. Now, I know this thing has been a huge topic on social media. At least it has been on TikTok. Again, you can follow with the parent company of TikTok at the GNS Inc. But what it was, because of the shooting that happened in Tennessee, there were 2 representatives in Tennessee. And right now I'm looking to get it. Just give me one quick second. Here we go. So we had 2 Democratic members. One person was Justin Jones, and the other was Justin Pearson. And they were having a meeting at their House of Representatives. And these 2 individuals were expelled by expressing their viewpoints about the gun control from another mass shooting that happened in the state of Tennessee last week. Now, there were 3 members that were speaking on this issue. And I named 2 of them. Again, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson. The 3rd member was a young lady by the name of Gloria Johnson, who also was speaking on this matter. Gloria was not expelled from the floor, but the 2 Justins were. And there's video of one of the House members. I don't remember his name. Speaking to, I believe it was Justin. I believe it was speaking to Justin Pearson. I believe Justin Pearson was the gentleman who was talking. And listen, it doesn't matter. One of the things that civilized folks, if you will, would say about black people is, and they can say this about anybody, but there's a very common stigma against black, especially black men. We're uneducated, we're ignorant, we're no remorse for authority, no respect for authority, no type of respect for law and order, for the system, for life in general. These two individuals, along with many of us, represent the opposite of that stigma. And there's a video of this one gentleman in the house who's literally talking down to him. And no matter how articulate, how well presented your argument can be, this particular individual still somehow found a way to address him as a child throwing a tantrum. Anyone who understands what a dog whistle comment is knows what a dog whistle comment is. Anybody who's dated, been married to, related, worked with a narcissist understands what a dog whistle comment is. It's a comment that is said that to the masses, they don't hear anything wrong. They don't even hear anything remotely disrespectful. But to the person who is aimed or targeted to, you hear clear as day the condensation in that tone. You completely hear just condescending, belittling, provoking. You hear all these things. And you know what they're doing. They're trying to get you to react so you can prove their point and say, see? Now, people will sit back and say, well, all you gotta do is turn the other cheek and look the other way and pay no mind to be the big person. The issue with doing that in many cases, if you don't react the way they want you to, it usually gives them a green light to continue to do it, because now it's for their amusement. They can say what they want and you're not gonna do nothing about it. So now it's game on. The flip side of that coin is their manipulation works. You say something, you do respond, you do react, and now they look at you like, see what I mean? I didn't say anything. They're crazy. Because now it's, I got you to react. I pressed the button. I pulled the lever. I flipped the switch. I got you. So now everyone is going to look at you as, wow, you're really triggered off that. Because they're not going to understand that. That's clearly what this man was doing by making comments such as, well, you're in the well now. You're throwing a tantrum. And it was Justin Pearson who made the comment who said, who in their right mind would appreciate being talked to like this? He kept his composure 100%. And the gentleman who made the comment, you can see by the smirk, it was more of a, how are you going to react to that? He knew what he was doing. If you don't look at it from a racial perspective, you can look at it from a narcissistic perspective. And that's kind of where the difference is. When it comes to racial issues, I try to get people to understand. There's a lot of boy cried wolf when it comes to injustices. And if anyone remembers the old story, Little Boy Who Cried Wolf, about a little boy who lived in the forest in the woods with this village, and he thought it'd be cute and funny to say wolf, wolf, wolf. And also people would run inside and lock the door because they thought a wolf was coming to eat the children and eat their animals and attack. But there was never a wolf. He just thought it was funny. So he does it a couple more times and everyone starts to get irritated and tired. Well, one day, a wolf actually shows. And wolf, wolf! No one responds, no one reacts, no one even moves. They just keep going about their business. And he's running around, desperately pleading to everybody, wolf. No one's buying what he's selling. Well, in the story, the wolf slaughters basically everyone in the town. And he's sad because no one will listen to him. The moral of the story is, there's a lot of people out here who pull and use the race card. There's a lot of people out here who legitimately do things for the race card. You have to know who is who. Is it a credible person? Is this person somebody that's trustworthy? No. Sure he is. Sure it is. Sure it was. But is it somebody who you know for a fact, okay, this person's credible source? Look, their story is detailed, bro. I mean, boom is boom, and I'm putting myself in this situation. We get so desensitized with things that I honestly feel that when there's a serious matter that takes place, nobody budges, nobody moves. Because there's no more sources out there who are credible. When someone brings up a topic, we don't believe it because we hear it so much. It's like just another story. You think it's bullshit. With this situation in Tennessee, it's a clear act of, boy, stay in your place. Tennessee is the home of the Ku Klux Klan. Tennessee is the home of a lot of the civil rights movement. Tennessee, I believe it's Tennessee, who wants to keep a law of lynching to make it legal. I mean, you had a councilman make the suggestion and grin about it and laugh about it and giggle about it. When people sit back and say racism and civil rights and things like this was so long ago, bro, Ruby Bridges is still alive. And anyone who knows who Ruby Bridges is, Ruby Bridges was if you remember the image of the little black girl who was going to school for the first time, it integrated it, and she had to have an escort, like law enforcement, escort her to class. That's Ruby Bridges. She's 66. She's still with us today. People who live this life They're still amongst us. This is the reason why I say you might want to start talking to some people who have credible sources when it comes to things like this, ladies and gentlemen, because they lived it. They might be able to tell you things that connect dots that you don't see. Again, when my mother tried to do this as a teenager, I told her, life is not like that, Mom. It's not like that. If all it was is different nowadays. No, it's not. I was just too young to recognize what it was she was trying to show me. But I tell you right now, the people who she was talking to, they recognized what she was saying. They peeped it. I didn't. So that's my fault. But I was young. Find yourself a credible source. So he was expelled. Both Justins were expelled. And like I said, when you go back and you talk to the third member who was not expelled from the floor during that time, Gloria Johnson, when they asked Gloria Johnson, why do you think your two constituents were expelled from the floor, but you weren't? She clearly says, what do you think? It's because I'm white. She understood why they let her stay and the other two had to go. She understood it. Now, I understand there's people out there who's not going to want to believe, but the problem is, in many cases, the sources that you're listening to are the people. Every group has this, right? Every group has that small minority group that makes the loudest noise, right? Have you ever noticed that when something happens, they, black and brown folks, we can vouch for this. Whenever something goes on in the hood, they always go to the one person who is the most ignorant of the group, right? They never really go to the well-rounded person who's dressed presentable. They don't go to that person. They go to the most stereotypical person in the neighborhood and put a camera all in their face and highlight all the stereotypical attributes. Have you ever noticed that? It's crazy. It's to the point now where it's like we can guess who's about to speak in certain neighborhoods, right? But when it comes to the voice of the people who are actually saying something legit, you have to take, as best you can, take away the situation of listening to just the stereotype. Like, why do they go to the person with the messy hair and the ran down t-shirt and the holy jeans with the who appears to have an addiction problem and ask them questions? Like, why do they go to that individual? Out of everyone who owns a home, they go into the guy with no teeth and a bike and ask for his opinion. Not saying that person didn't see what happened, but there wasn't anybody else on the block when that went down? Maybe not. Hopefully the sharp people understood what I'm talking about. And again, when it comes to certain issues like this, you gotta pay attention, man. Because they can't afford for this system to go anywhere. It's how they run this country. Speaking of run this country, we're going to talk about the BRICS situation. And BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. I'm sorry, Saudi Arabia. There's other countries involved as well. So basically all these companies, or these countries, are coming together to basically wane themselves off of the US dollar. This has been going for about a week or so. I didn't speak on this last week because I was having my own little moment of clarity that I needed to kind of just get away and detach from everything. But the yuan from China is the most rotated currency right now, I believe, in Russia. And the Saudi is also using the yuan. Here's the issue. This is basically what Gaddafi was trying to do before he was murdered. Was use the natural resources in Africa to fund their own currency. So ultimately, BRICS is exactly what Gaddafi was attempting to do, something similar to in Africa when he was murdered. Come to find out. Basically, the U.S. didn't want that to get out because they obviously want the world to evolve around the dollar. That's where we have the most control. They're using our currency. But as you know, people started to kind of go up a bit. Now, here's the thing. Some people want to blame Biden for it. That's cute. Listen, for the past 80 years of crap, you can't blame one administration. Listen, every administration is trying to undo the bullshit from the previous administration and set new laws in place before the next administration. And that's a rinse and repeat unless you win a second term. And this is what happens in politics. If you ever met someone in politics, depending on the level of politics, the president, they don't really have much power. They can veto some shit, or they can agree with something or disagree, but there's always 2/3 majority vote. So whether Trump wants to do something or not wants to do something, if he's outnumbered, he has to carry it out. Now, the difference was Trump was the kind of person, if he didn't agree with it, he was going to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, but I don't agree with it. I think it's dumb. I think it's stupid. I don't really agree with this. This is not my decision, but I'm outnumbered. Here's what we're going to do. He will throw any person under the bus to let you know, hey, this is not me, this is them. So the one thing I will give Trump is he didn't necessarily adhere to anyone's rules that he didn't agree with or he wasn't in charge of. The bad thing about Trump was the same thing that was good about him. If it wasn't about him, he really didn't want nothing to do with it. Everybody else is kind of like a yes man, regardless of who it was. They had a policy, they had things they had to follow, they had orders they had to take to carry out, so on and so forth. But here's my take on the BRICS situation. We're starting to get into the digital currency. If you haven't, the owner, founder, creator of Cash App was murdered last week. But there's another company, and I can't find in my notes the name of this company, that is a federally ran. Basically, it does what Cash App, Venmo, it does what all these companies do, but it's ran by the government. So, PayPal, right? It does what these companies do, but it's well, Cash App is no longer in the picture. Rest in peace to him, only 43 years old. PayPal is going to be next, and so is Venmo. Guarantee it. I can't remember the name of the company, but they're trying to take charge. So by going off and making the dollar, quote unquote, weaker, basically the paper currency within this country within the next, I say 10 years, maybe less than that, is going to be obsolete. So the cash that we have is going to be more of just a relic, a souvenir. And everything's going to be digital, whether it's going to be payments, it's going to be rent payments, it's all going to be digital. Okay? Which makes it easier for them to track money, which makes it easier for them to, my guess is they're losing money on people in taxes. I'm sure they're not going to come out in public to say it. This is me. I feel that they're losing a lot of money on top of this, so it puts them in a predicament where we have to go digital. Not only that, if money is owed and everything is digitized, it makes it easy for them to control and garnish and locate and transfer. I remember speaking on how if cars are automatically, just automated, and they put in, decal has a failure to appear, and it takes me back to court. I can't do anything because the car is automatically driving to the destination, and it's overwritten. So it doesn't matter where the hell I was going. It's going to take me to the courthouse. And the system is going to communicate with their system that we're en route. We have an FTA, we're turning him in. There's nothing I can do because I'm in the car. I feel the same thing is going to happen when it comes to money. It's going to happen to where you owe X amount of money and this. Okay. Depending on who this is and where their ranking is in the system of the economy, there's going to be a lien. There's going to be a judgment. There's going to be self-calculating, and wages are going to be taken out automatically. There is no longer going to be use for cash. And again, which is going to be very difficult to do anything with, quote unquote, under the table, because the banking system's not going to recognize it. It's going to be play money, right? It's going to be play money. We used to be able to take cash to different countries, and that could hold some weight because of the power of the money, of what the dollar was. No, not anymore. It's getting to the point where, again, the yuan or whatever currency it is that they use, that's going to be circulated. And Americans, let's face it, we're arrogant as shit. We're deathly arrogant, my opinion. Where anywhere we travel in the planet, our laws travel with us. Yet anyone in the world who travels here, your laws don't matter because you're in America. That's kind of how we think. So I believe that in the next 10 years or less, cash is going to be bye-bye. Take a $100 bill, frame that bitch, because it's going to be nothing but a relic and something you can speak about in a museum. About back in my day, we used to spend this. And I mean, I'm not really too shocked and shaken because whether you are a fan of him or not, I remember Robert Kiyosaki saying basically, or it wasn't Robert Kiyosaki, it was someone in his camp, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. Gosh, it's going to kill me. But he kind of reminded me of Horatio from CSI Miami. So, that's who he reminds me of. And he says, every civilization who ever went to a paper currency, it's never lasted. It never lasted. Now, this was about 10 years ago when he says this. Daniel Caruso, not Daniel Caruso. I'm sorry. What's his name? Caruso. Anyway, tangent, doesn't really matter. You know what I'm talking about. Redhead dude who played Horatio. That's who the guy reminds me of in Robert Kiyosaki's team. And so, like I said, about 10, 15 years ago, he was basically saying that every civilization who's went on a paper currency has never survived. Never have, ever. And here we are, like I said, in the next 10 years, everything's going to be 100% digital. From debit cards to tap pays to pay through apps. You will not have cash or coin anywhere anymore. It's going to be useless. You know, if you want to keep it as a collector's item, sure. But outside of that, man, it's going to be useless. And so I feel that's what this BRICS thing is all about. I just want to believe that the U.S. government, as arrogant and powerful as the U.S. government is, there's no way for me to sit back and say they're going to let any shortcoming get public. Granted, another reason why they're trying to ban TikTok from America is probably because they can't control it. And it's information that we are having access to in America that they cannot manipulate. So they want it gone for, air quotes, national security. It's always national security when it comes to something that's going to make the people realize something that they don't want us to know or understand. It's always national security. But that's what I'm banking on. Honestly, truly, really. Cash is going to be obsolete, man. And there's nothing we can do. Like I said, you won't even be able to take it overseas and do anything with it right now because it's going to be worthless worldwide. That's it. And you got to then ask yourself, is the currency that other countries are going to be running with, how will you even be able to compare it to transfer or exchange the US dollar? Right? Find yourself some credible people to have these conversations with. You don't always have to agree, but you can at least come to an agreement of understanding what's what. It's Decal to Eat the Podcast. You can get me at E.I.TH.R, the elephant in the room. Thank you guys for giving me your time for these moments on this Monday in Davis, California. We'll be back on Wednesday. You guys be good.